So, Angeline, welcome to Brunch with Friends.
Oh, thank you for having me, Joe.
I'm so excited. We were talking offline about how the joys of having Jules and I doing this, in that most of the time we both get to dial in, and then sometimes one of us gets pulled in different directions. But then whoever doesn't dial in has always got complete FOMO of missing out on the conversation. So I was like, this one's going to be great, Julia, and this is your problem for missing out. Sorry.
He is missing out, but we do get to talk a bit, Jules and I, through our AEA board roles.
Well, yes. Okay. Well, that is it. Look, there is so much. I've got like a bulk list of questions that I am super keen to absolutely pump you for information. So, do you want to kick us off? Give us an introduction. Who are you? Where are you? Why have we roped you into a call with us today?
Yes, well, look, thank you so much for inviting me to the table today over brunch. I'm pretty excited. I'm here. I guess, one, I love this concept of what you guys are doing and have been doing, and I've come along and been a listener to some of those as well. So today I thought I'd kind of take the opportunity. Of course, you've got questions as well. Is sort of go from what I call sort of starting from my agricultural foundations to national boardrooms where I sit today. And just probably over my career where I've, lived and worked in Australia, in cities, in regional areas as well. And, finding the opportunities to better connect across is where probably I've seen the biggest value in my career. And I'm kind of, sort of sitting here thinking these kind of remind me of the Sunday lunches that you sort of have. So I'd love to have a much more interactive conversation. Couple of things I do want to touch on, Joe, is sort of this thing what I call the bridge building approach. Kind of connecting that regional and urban, but not just that, but how. And I'm an innovation cat, right? So it's kind of like how do we bring that all together to what we need to achieve. Happy to share my journey around that innovation commercialization. Now, what I sort of call national leadership from the boards that I sit on. But I'm really, really passionate about this systems thinking and focusing on the future and how we entwine and bring that. And then lastly, I think, there's a legacy in each one of us that wants to leave behind. And I'm very particular about that, is how do we empower the next generation? And some of the work that I'm doing through my mission, which is G100 Mission Million, Asia Pacific, I chair that, and that's all around food systems innovation and resilience. Look, we all need food to eat. We're sitting at the table today. So what a better conversation that we could have.
I love that. Well, like you've already touched on there, and if anyone has done some come across you prior or have done some Google stalking of you prior to this session, will see that you have got such an interesting career path and journey and things. And so I'd be super keen to sort of go back to that origin piece, like sort of what was early career like for you? And I would be super keen to sort of see and hear how it's evolved, because I'm totally leading you into then some of the questions that I've got for you. So, but I'm really sort of keen to see sort of how things progressed, and I guess weaving into that this piece that you've brought up already around legacy,
Mm.
how potentially other people's legacies have been drawing you along with them along the way. So I'm super interested to hear, sort of taking it back to the start.
Oh yeah, and it's a while to go back, and I'm not done either. So, but just for everyone. So, I'm a child of migration into Australia. My parents migrated in the 80s, and before then, I was born in Fiji and basically spent my formative years in Fiji and across the Pacific Islands. We went to Samoa, and I could speak fluent Samoan when I was in sort of kind of mid high school a little bit as well. But the connection I think to the islands and growing up that way was I come from agriculture, so holidays at my grandparents' farm where you're in the middle of sugarcane season and watching the flurry of activity that happened, but also it actually got me really curious about how do you cut cane and then turn it into this thing called sugar and all the process that it goes through, for instance. But even, kind of getting close to a cow and how milk comes about and all of those things. So I think really early on, it really sparked this curiosity about why things happened the way they did. Fast forward, I went off to study food science and technology, and it's not because it was a career that I wanted to pick, but it was because the advice I got from my dad was pick food because everybody needs to eat and you like to eat. So it was like, oh, no brainer. So here we are, fast forward, of an amazing career. And after my studies, I went to my first role. Was in industry. I then went back to do my PhD and I came out, and the PhD was really solving an industry problem. So if anyone out there has ever eaten those salads in bags that you get, back when I did my PhD, a head of lettuce was probably 50 cents, and those were going for about $4 or $5. And everyone used to say, why would you pay so much for it? But there's a whole lot of science in there, which has really been around the how do you cut something and preserve it, and then how do you get it in a form in a safe way through distribution through to consumers and offer convenience at a price point, of course, right? So that was sort of my PhD, solving an industry problem. We got commercialized. And then I ended up in a career sort of in the innovation space in some of the largest food and agri-food businesses that you probably know. You guarantee you'll have a product that I've had a hand in your pantry, in your fridge, in your freezer. And, that's like the companies of Mars, of Fonterra, of Yum, which is KFC, Pizza Hut, Taco Bell, Mondelez. And then I went off from Mondelez. I actually co-founded a world first innovation hub, which was called the Food Innovation Center. And I would say that was one of my career highlights of going from being in corporate, and then actually doing something standalone in a way, and then creating it. And that center now still survives and is continuing to thrive at Monash University, where we took it to, because it could then become a service model. And most recently, my role was at the J.R. Simplot company, where I went in to actually transform that organization for growth through innovation. So it was looking across the mature categories of everything from potato to vegetable, and therefore having a very strong connection back to the farm and the land and the regional areas, to creating value and getting products out, not just to Australian consumers, but global consumers, particularly in Asia and the US as well. So that's kind of been the career journey. Now I'm fast forward a little bit, and I'm actually in this space of expanding and building a non-exec career pathway through boards, which is very, very interesting. I would say I'm on my P plates on it as I navigate that, and kind of building the networks and refining a little bit. It's very, very different to what was life in executive land to coming to the board side. But I might stop there, and hopefully that kind of gives everyone a little bit of a picture of the life that has been so far.
Well, I think I can just see nodding happening for those that are dialing in live, but I think that you will all agree, you can see exactly why we got Angeline on the call today, because I think you touched on it, that bridge piece, that metro rural divide, that ability to have such a strong understanding of sort of grassroots agriculture, food systems, rural communities, and all the things that go to understanding that why a head of lettuce costs one thing and then a bag of lettuce that goes with it. But then to hear that corporate career side of things is also fascinating, which then leads into that board stuff. And so, that a big piece that we're wanting to sort of the role that we're wanting to play in the connection table is really just, again, creating those opportunities and introducing people to get from L plates to P plates in this this board career thing. And I think that what you touched on there with the network piece is super interesting, and obviously piques my interest always. Do you want to? I want to drill into that bit. Sorry, I'm sitting at the library. I'm having Wi-Fi drama, so I'm at the library, and apologies if it's a bit noisy in the background. I'm super interested to hear, because I want to pick apart some of that stuff there, but I'm super interested to hear about what role does a network play when you are transitioning? And I don't even want to say transitioning because it can be something that's happening at a parallel time, but as you are quite proactively doing into that non-executive sort of setup, what role does that networking piece play? How are you strategically doing that? Like, what are your sort of thoughts around that piece? Because I know that that's something that people are super interested to do, even if they're not ready to be there, and they might not ever want to go into a full career of non-executive directing stuff. But that piece is the same whether you want to go into it at a community level, through to a federal government board, through to industry stuff. Like, I'm super interested to drill into the network piece first. And if any of you, while you're live, want to stick some questions in the chat while we're going as well, go for it, and I can draw on those too.
Sounds good. That's a great question. And I think, if I step back and I look over my career, this thing about building your network, but it's not just a network. I find network is such a cool word. It's actually nurturing relationships, right? And if I go back, I was kind of doing that through my university, through all of my roles. And now, I find myself in this space of boardland, which again is highly, highly networked. And so a couple of things that I have probably learned along the way is you've got to be, yes, strategic around it, because otherwise you'll meet lots of people, you'll have lots of great chats, and they're good, right? But kind of go back to what it is that you're also wanting to focus on. So, for instance, for me, I'm very purpose-led and values-driven. I think like most people are. So that was really clear, to have that kind of value proposition. And along your career, it changes because of the life experiences that you have or the roles that you have. And so currently, mine is very, very clear for me in terms of what it is that I want to do from now until forward. The second part is and I've always probably been like this, is be quite strategic in planning what your future kind of looks like. That doesn't mean you must have a 10-year solid plan and a 5-year step by step or anything like that. But again, taking that purpose and sort of using that to go, okay, in 10 years' time, where do I see myself? What is the kind of life I want to be living? What is the family I want to have? What are the experience I wanted to have gained and things like this. So this is something, and I kind of take that back every year. I kind of have a bit of a plan that I kind of put together, and I go back to my 5-year or my 10-year and refresh that slightly from what I've learned. And a lot of that training has probably come from being a leader in some of this exec, where I've looked after teams across Asia, across the globe, regional teams, remote teams, all of that, where you're really focused not just on performance, but you're focused on people's career growth and development plans and things like that, right? So apply it to yourself. And then I think the third part is, I kind of touched on the first bit, is the relationship piece. And we all probably get it, we'll have worked with somebody who all of a sudden remembers you because they need you for something. And and I think the thing for me is, the way that I kind of is kind of who you are. And I'm a pretty helpful person. I will support people who reach out, right? One of the things I found is, as I've transitioned from exec land to non-exec now, where you'd have to really kind of build almost a fairly different type of network. And again, that is quite strategic to what it is you're trying for in terms of the types of board roles or the types of communities you want to serve. And I found that it's been quite challenging, even for someone like me who's well connected and has nurtured relationships over the way. I'm kind of been in this new zone of having to actually almost start all over again. So applying back some of those principles, but also then kind of going, okay, how do I nurture some of these relationships? And it's right, it's kind of, almost, if you have a role, you have a title, your people come to you. When you don't have that, it's a different case, right? And I'm not saying pay close attention, but pay attention to the people who call you when the phone doesn't always ring off. because there's always, I think, yes, it's quid pro quo of helping people and not, but it's also, I think the other thing for me was I've learned probably over the last 2 years to be so much more bolder and so much more courageous of putting myself out there to, if you follow me on LinkedIn or connect with me on LinkedIn, you'll see I'm prolific on there, and I could probably advertise for LinkedIn if I needed to. But that has been absolutely, and that's been cold, reach outs, it's been warm reach out, it's been hot reach outs as well. So you've got to actually put yourself out there, because unless you help yourself, nobody else is going to be coming along to do it for you.
I think that's such fabulous advice. And I think that there is so much that you can do that rural folk, we can't fall back on that tyranny of distance of being an excuse on not building your professional network. And again, I feel like maybe we need to go and hit up LinkedIn for some partnership cash here, because I feel like I am spruiking their wares all the time. But I think I completely agree with what you're saying. I'm super interested to pull in from what you just said, talking about that planning piece and being strategic with your planning. But I really just want to touch on the fact that you didn't speak about that board career or that leadership career as something, as a separate thing. You talked about it as a whole piece. It's you as the human. So where
Yeah,
does this fit in with family and work? And yes, we have to earn a certain amount of money, and I want to have impact in this piece. I just wanted to really just flag that I really love that looking at it as that work-life blend thing, and that whole piece there is super interesting. I'm just going to pull Pip's question in here.
Sure.
Is there one thing in particular that has been had the biggest impact on your visibility or governance skills or knowledge building? Great question, Pip.
Yeah, great question. And three different things. And I'll probably say first and foremost, probably each one would be different, right? So if
That was a very greedy question, just saying.
Right, why not? Pip, courage to you to put it out there like that. So if I tackle visibility, remind me, Joe, if I forget one of three of them. Visibility, I think the role that I had as CEO of Monash Food Innovation, which basically I went from working in large big corporates and being accountable for the P&L of that organization to all of a sudden, the bold vision I got given was, Ange, go forth and create. How do you create a brighter future in food manufacturing in the state of Victoria? And a blank sheet of paper, right? And for the first time in my career, I had the opportunity to actually just think not about individual businesses, but the whole of the state, the whole of the industry, and this wonderful industry that had given me so many opportunities. So my mindset truly shifted from not about the we just in the backyard that I was in, but that broader sector thing. And that's where it led to the systems thinking piece, right? But that role probably propelled my visibility more than anything, not just in Vic, in Australia, globally as well. But it was also, when I moved it to Monash, I was the CEO, I was the BD, I was the person who was putting the tables away and setting up the workshops and everything else, right, as a startup would. And I think then using the platforms and being quite creative, so LinkedIn, speaking, putting things out there when I would have gone, oh my goodness, who would want to listen to me, and how can I craft messaging that would appeal? So that was the visibility piece. But the visibility piece just didn't come. I had to work really hard to get there. And I think then I learned, and therefore I'm still applying it. Your thing on governance, how do you kind of build your governance skills? So probably about 8 years ago, and I was in the role at Mondelez. I kind of, when I did my career planning with my then leader, was, I sort of set my sights on boards, but I didn't know that, it looked really, back then to me, it looked sexy, this thing of career of having boards and all of that and everything. And so I actually kind of put a bit of a plan together to ask myself some questions. Well, is boards where you want to go one day? What is boards all about? What do they do there? What are the kinds of people who, get inspired to do that? And I ended up actually going and cold reach outs. coffees with lots of people, board directors, chairs, all of that, who are very generous with their time. And then I also did a bit of a thing called, actually, what do I need to build capability in? What do I need to learn? What kind of studies do I need to do? Back then, the AICD was not as big as it is now, so the roles didn't always ask for it. But I had to kind of decipher, and the outcome of that is I actually went, right, for me to be quite serious about boards, if this is what I want to do in 10 years' time, I need to, one, get the qualification because that would be quite clear to learn. And I went and did my AICD back then, but I didn't actually have any board roles because I was so busy in exec land. But what I was doing was whenever I got the opportunity to do advisory or pro bono stuff, I jumped at it and just did it out of hours to kind of keep building it. Otherwise, I'd have a lovely piece of paper and be qualified. And the great thing about the company directors course is I could actually use a lot of that through my CEO, my exec roles throughout the career as well. So it wasn't like it was wasted. I just wasn't getting to the governance piece in that sense. So I think that helped through the piece. What was the last one that Pip put in? It was visibility, governance. Did you have three?
Sort of the skills and knowledge building, governance. That was sort of all, I guess, the same. It was some of the, like, was it an AICD course or was it learning on the job, which is sometimes more powerful than AICD, I'd argue. But yeah,
I think you need both. I think the AICD validated some of the learning on the job that I bought, but also gave me new theory, therefore that I could take and practice and actually build that through experience as well. So I would say it was a little bit of both, Pip.
And it's just so interesting listening to you, and I'm sure like people like joining us today or watching or listening to this back would agree that we've had such a variety of people that we've spoken to who quite often their career has been quite serendipitous and they've sort of fallen into things, and it's, I randomly met someone here or so-and-so put me forward for this. But I'm finding it so fascinating how I feel like you would totally have been my teacher's pet child when I was in the classroom. You were like doing everything. So but that whole thing of thinking about this as a whole, like breaking, eating the elephant one bite at a time, like going into those different stages and things and collecting things along the way. Like it's such an interesting, like it's quite different to how my brain works myself, but like I very much fall into that serendipity pile of things. But I think there is so much that you're making me think about, so many things that you can be putting into place that can be really tiny and that can be really grassroots, that can be starting just that flywheel, loading the flywheel up, that you can be moving towards something that could be 10, 15, 20 years down the track. And I think it's super interesting that you're talking about this, looking back at 10 years ago, you were putting these things into place. So I'm I guess, sort of continuing a little bit on Pip's question there. The AICD is a big investment. It's a big course. It's a lot easier to justify when you're in a corporate role that you are reporting to a board or to do those things. But I think a lot of the people in our network sort of find it a really hard one, and it's sort of that chicken and egg. I need to get that position first before I can justify the spend on this, or maybe that board role will pay for my thing to do that. Is there other bits of professional development or training that you did that were more of that bite-sized thing, or any other sort of training that you did in a professional capacity that was helpful along the way?
Oh, lots, absolutely. And I get the AICD is quite an investment, right? And I think that was my mindset at the time, is I kind of balked at the cost as well. I'm going, and my work did not pay for it. They gave me time, but they did not pay for it. So it was 10 plus whatever that I had to pay. But I looked at it as an investment at that point. And I think that was also a bit of a shift, is kind of, you go, okay, this is what I want to do. And if I don't invest, then how do I get there? And I get it that not everybody can. So I think, bite the elephant one at a time and kind of go, there are definitely lots of governance things out there. I think there's a couple of things. So it's either the courses you go and you can pay and learn, and there's stuff that happens online, there's classroom stuff, and there's a whole lot about there. There's not-for-profit stuff if that's where you want to go to as well. The other piece I've found is my friend LinkedIn is, they do have a lot of online stuff available for absolutely free, guys, that you can go and access. And also lots and lots of references and reading materials on where you can find things. So as a leader, the Harvard Business Review would be one that I would go to, right? But that would give you theory. Then I take that and actually practice it in my team as a leader and see, okay, how do I decipher? And being authentic to yourself as well, because you can, the minute you just take theory out and go, boom, it doesn't quite always translate as well. So I think there's a lot of things out there. The other thing that I have also appreciated is having mentors and identifying role models, throughout my career. And again, if it was a skill set that I was looking to build, so say, for instance, back I can remember scenario planning, when that came in, when you were looking at scenario planning and to strategic things that you needed to do. Had no idea, I read up a little bit about it, and then I went, okay, so who's actually doing this? I want to know the nitty-gritty of it. And I just I asked people, and I think I probably used LinkedIn again, and just found people who were there and just wrote them a little quick note and said, hey, will you be open for a 15-minute chat? I've got a couple of questions around this, and can you share your experience? And I think having a multi-pronged approach to this is always good. So being as creative as you can, because there's lots of people who learn differently, and I'm probably someone who also learns a lot by doing and experiencing it myself, as opposed to just reading theory. But I do go to the theory to kind of get my base knowledge, if you will.
Yeah, that's great. Pip, go for it.
Sorry, you just sparked a question which may be a little off track, but same, linked. You talked about finding mentors. Did you also put your hand up to be a mentor? So mentoring other people, and did that sort of help you also define some leadership skills? Or
Yes. Yeah, no, great question. Absolutely. I have over my time mentored and also being a coach, and I've been a mentee on the other side as well. So there's some amazing, obviously through my leadership in all the different organizations I worked in, so internal, but I also belong to, with the Australian Institute of Food Science and Technologists. So over that, I've mentored, early career students who've come through, or early graduates, or even, people who are in mid-career and a little bit stuck, and some towards the end of their career as well. So, this is kind of what I was saying before about the next generation and the legacy. One of the ways I do this is through mentoring, and a lot of that is pretty much pro bono, because I just can't help myself to do that. But I'm not advertising this here. And as and in all of those is, I think I have actually also benefited as a mentor in every situation, because I've learned about myself. And learned the skills, but also learned from the other person about things, and I've mentored people across diverse sectors and roles and cultures. So I think that curiosity that is so innate in me always kind of bubbles up to the surface, and hence why I get involved with these things.
You're one of those suckers that gets roped into these things all the time.
Always,
Exhibit A.
always.
Exhibit A. You're dialing in with us today.
Having fun at the table.
I actually just wanted to pop in here with Erica's question, which is hilarious, and I very much want to know the response to this as well. Are you finding board life as sexy as expected? What are the pros and cons that you found on being on these boards?
I'll have to be careful what I say, given some of my board colleagues and what they would say. I think you can make anything sexy, Erica. It's about the mindset and the curiosity and the passion that you take to it. So that's been probably one thing that I've done. Look, I am actually really, really enjoying it. If I go back 12 months ago to now, I probably had 2 board roles. So if we were in May this year and I went back May last year, I had 0 board roles. right? And it can be very daunting when you go in there and you go, right, how do I make this happen? Because everybody I spoke to, the plethora of great advice that I'm so grateful for, told me it's hard yakka. You have to rebuild all your networks. It takes 3 years for you to establish yourself, to get to a consistency. And then I learned this thing about this lovely thing called portfolio career. And I went, wow, how do I have one of those? That sounds pretty sexy, right? And all of a sudden, you're not in a stable, where you're getting income and whatever else. You're actually hustling for all of that and building your portfolio. But you can't actually rest on your laurels either, because you have to think that future going, all right, my term's expiring. What's going to be my next bit of portfolio looking like as well? So I'm actually enjoying it because I thrive in that ambiguity myself. And I love the fact that I think I have just expanded my brain and my perspective so much more than probably where I was exec in one P&L, only looking and thinking about that company, for instance, as well. So yeah, Erica, I think you can make it sexy.
Listening to you speak, like, you're a startup. Like, you've got to hustle, you've got to
Yeah.
do sales, you've got to nail down your value proposition. What is your USP? You're a startup.
Yeah, I'm in refining. I'm failing fast, hopefully failing cheaply, and I'm going again. Each time, it's a flywheel, as you said, right? Each time you're kind of learning and iterating yourself forward. I mean, just pick value proposition. 18 months later, my value proposition on version 1 that I started to version freaking 100, whatever I'm at, is so different now. And that's not because, I have changed that much, but it's because I've learned and I've kind of looked at and read the tea leaves, looked at the landscape. I've trained myself and back to my purpose, going, okay, now how do I want to actually position myself? But the things that I actually want to be doing as well. That makes me sing, right?
So that's super interesting, because that to me sounds like that value prop that you had 12 months, 10 years ago changes with each new experience that comes through. It tweaks and does things, and you've got more to offer and different things. But I think what's super interesting is you've referred back to what is that purpose statement. And I feel that if that's the focus for people, if you're really nailing what that is, that becomes your North Star, and it helps you navigate around as your skills and experience and things change and evolves and does this. If you've got that purpose statement as your anchor piece, that can sort of help with that mindset piece. I want to just pull on what you said there around you sort of thrive in that ambiguity and that sort of hustle stage
One of those
things.
recaps, I think.
I was going to say, I don't think that is the norm for most people. That is not, like, most people don't go and do a startup because it's awful. It's horrible. It's hard work. It is not secure financially. It is, regardless of what you're doing in your core businesses, it is sales. You are selling. And so if we're using you as the startup analogy, how do you sort of treat yourself as a business as far as what amount of your time is spent on brand, Angeline? What amount of time is hustling on sales to make sure that pipeline of the next gig is there? How much is spent genuinely reading board papers to actually deliver on the stuff that you're doing? Like, is that something you've been so strategic to get here? Are you having to be strategic around what life looks like?
Oh, good. I wish I could say that. I am, Joe, but no. And maybe, if I just step back and probably, you mentioned why I thrive in this is because of my early experience. By the time I was in year 12, it was my 15th school. So imagine my life as a young kid, right? I mean, and it's not because I was getting expelled in schools, by the way, so don't get, but I was never the perfect student either. But because we moved, my dad was in ag and horticulture, my mum's a nurse. And so we moved all the time across the Pacific, in Queensland, regional, as I told you, and then back in Victoria here. And so I had to really learn to adapt and be resilient, because when you're a kid, my goodness, you get thrown in and you're trying to break in the cliques and all of that. And sometimes I'll be in that school for 6 months, and then I'll be off to a new one, kind of thing, right? And I think all of that traveling just created the person that I am today, around resilience and bouncing back and being unafraid of the unknown, kind of thing, right? So there's an answer to why it is that I am like the way I am today. And so if I yeah, look, one of my mentors a long time ago, I was probably when I worked at Mars, she gave me advice. She said, you have to think of yourself as a brand, like a food brand, like an auto brand or any other brand. Think of yourself as a brand and start building that each time you have an experience, each time you're going and learning something, each time you make a mistake. They all make you who you are. And take all of that and be the best version that you can create for yourself in the time frame that you are, in the life stage that you are. I think that was such powerful gold advice that I still carry today. And so I wrote on my thing, I wrote Ange Eat. I've got to start thinking that way, and I've got to start to build. And then I had my career and family and all of these things, and it still stayed at the back of my mind. But I found now I've actually had to really bring it to the forefront in this almost Ange Inc. brand that I'm now building as a non-exec career. But again, back to my purpose, back to my values, and making sure that is the authentic me as well. To how much time I spend doing, I don't think I can chunk it down into percentages. There's the job to do, and I always give the job the best thing to do, right? All my boards, papers prepared, going in, do that, absolutely non-negotiable. The second part is, how do I, spend the time? And I think, back to the visibility through social media or through other things, it's actually been quite strategic to find. So I launched a newsletter called Feed Forward, right? So part of it is back to my purpose. And my purpose, by the way, I've been talking a little bit about it. Let me share it. My purpose is about transforming agri-food systems through innovation. It's where I've worked, where I've lived, where I've grown up in. And therefore, it's creating the food systems that serve both people and planet. And that's become really, really important. Particularly, I talked about, you'd have some of my food, and I've created bad food before. I'm not proud of it. So I'm trying to undo a little bit of that. But it drives me every single day. And therefore, that's part of ensuring that, when we talk about innovation, particularly in this country, it has to add value back to who's the end user, whether that's the farmer, whether that's the community, it's the dinner tables that need it most, right? So I am intrinsically passionate about that. Doesn't mean I'm not going to work in any other things outside of agri-food. Absolutely, I will. But I keep coming back to that's where my core thing is. So Feed Forward as a newsletter is just a way to actually go, how do I educate people? Because people like when people say to me, and you studied food technology, are you a cook? Chef? Like, that's like a lot. Half my family today still probably thinks I'm a chef. you know, because MasterChef has made something happen, right? But you just got that people don't understand. People, I think, don't understand how your food comes to be, what it takes to create. And we are so privileged in Australia that we have an abundance of it, right? That's available. But, and then we get shocked by, all the avocados going in to be plowed in the land and go, oh, all of a sudden we get worried about that. But then we just keep moving on, and we waste about 40% of food on the home side. So all of these things, they don't keep me awake at night, but I kind of go, what is my part to do in this? And that's kind of where I step into some of the interesting stuff, like hosting a podcast, which I had no idea about hosting podcasts. Figured that out last year, and we run a podcast called Women Transforming Food, and it's bringing stories of women who do amazing stuff. But every one of these women that I reached out to first said to me, Ange, are you sure you want to talk to me? What am I going to share? what is it that I do? And oh my goodness, so much so it's been so successful. We're about now recording series 2. And I get, emails from dad saying I listen to this thing with my 2 young daughters because I want to show them what role model females are like. What is it? 2025, guys, now. But we're still having some of these conversations, right? Anyway, I'll probably digressed a little bit, Joe, sorry.
No, but that was just, I agree with you, and that I can see why that has stuck with you. What a gold, like there was so many gold nuggets in there. Ange Inc. I love that. And I love that being strategic and prescriptive with what that brand looks like. And I think listening to you, it seems like that for everyone watching and listening to this, that needs to start yesterday, regardless of what you're doing, regardless of what the big picture thing is, because lots of sounds like, you're talking about 10-year ago plans to get to here. You're hearing advice around it's going to take you 3 years to get, like, this is a slow burn, but you building Joe Inc., whoever else Inc. from now or yesterday to see what that does. You're starting I guess that flywheel, we keep saying back to it again. It's just such a super interesting concept there.
And I don't want people to feel pressured either that, you've got, when you got to start yesterday, and I don't know about you, but I automatically go, oh my God, what have I been doing in my life, right? And I think it doesn't matter, where you are, in regional, in cities or whatever. I think it's just kind of going, you bring something unique that is all you, right? You bring a perspective that is not there to compete with, I'm not competing with you, Joe, or Pip you, or Kate you. I'm actually bringing perspective that complements other people. So again, coming with that mindset, I think starts to do that. And by that, I think that it shows in your spirit because you come with generosity, you come with curiosity, and you're trying to actually learn as a result. And I think those kind of things lead to better connections, and you both learn at the same time, rather than it's I've got to do this because someone else is doing that. And I don't know, every time I've done the bloody comparison thing, you just lose out because you're going, oh, what is this going to achieve me? I have to do what is actually right for me in the time frame that because at the end of the day, you answer to your own consciousness. Right? Maybe I went too holistic there. Who knows?
Can I ask a question? So I love the brand idea, and people have talked about the brand idea for a few years, but gee, it sits uncomfortably. Like it's like, how do I say I'm doing this without gloating or that it's coming? Because it isn't. Like, we all know that we're not people that do it because we think we're the best thing in the world. Yeah.
Why not, Pip? Why aren't you the best thing in the world?
Yeah. Well, see, it's so uncomfortable. Even when I put things on LinkedIn, which are often well received, you sort of, it's just uncomfortable.
It is. Yeah. Look, I'm uncomfortable every time that I put in, but you have to start somewhere, and you have to do it authentic to yourself, right? People will say, oh, most people will tell me when they meet me, and you're so busy. Go, oh, where do you get that from? Everything I see you, post on LinkedIn. So people cut this perception, right? And I'm going, no, actually, I'm thriving. I'm not busy. I'm thriving in the things that I'm doing. But it takes, yes, courage to do that. And I think in Australia, and I've worked outside of Australia and I've come back in and, but, I'm as Aussie as you kind of get, right? We do have this thing of the tall poppy stuff as well that comes in, and it's there innate in our culture, and we have to be mindful of it. And trust me, over the years, for all the great feedback that I get on my LinkedIn posts and, you're inspiring me, or this little story that you shared resonated with me, I've also gotten some doozies that say, stop going and blowing your trumpet, and people, these are warriors that will hide behind whatever. But does that detract me? No, because I think it goes back to my purpose of why I'm trying to do this for. And I genuinely feel that is my version of authentic, and people will probably disagree out there, and that's okay. I think when you put yourself out there, you have to take the good, the bad, and the ugly.
I agree with you. And I was just like laughing while you were talking, Pip, because I was like, that is such an Australian reaction. Like that is such well, I've done a couple of stints living in the US, and that is just you'd say things like that, and people were actually found it really jarring, like that sort of, well, what we call modesty. They'd be like, that's a really weird reaction for you to have. So it's so funny. It's such a cultural thing for Australians to be like, oh, like I did this thing, which you're like, if you were in America, literally, it would have been on a billboard.
Shout it out.
Shouting it out, and everyone would be like, yeah, girl, you've got
this. You go, girl.
No, that's really interesting. And when you said bring it back to your purpose, like when I do share something, it's because there's a purpose that sits behind that, which might always be visible, but it is to me. And I guess if I keep that in mind, then I'll stop being humble, maybe. I mean, God, even saying that, like, oh.
We're each our own worst enemy at the end of the day, right? Because we judge ourselves kind of thing. And sometimes let's just be kind to, like we are kind to others, let's be kind to self first. I think that's something I've had to learn the hard way over the years. So, that's even like just bold sharing it here with everybody. I'm being as raw as possible.
But, I just wanted to sort of push that a bit, that where you've said that while you get lots of encouragement and you're inspiring me and things, and the fact that you have had some people poo-poo you actually does genuinely surprise me, because I sort of have found, realistically, the only poo-pooing I get is generally from probably my sister, who's like, oh God, what are you doing this time? But it's generally like your family. Like rarely does anyone else be like, look at Pip posting that thing on LinkedIn. They're like, oh, that's cool what she's doing. Or they might think, actually, I should probably share some of the stuff that I'm doing as well. So I would push back on that, Pip. And I know that it's all of the inner turmoil that goes with posting on a LinkedIn thing. But I also wanted to sort of circle back to that, me, I guess, clarifying that urgency that I put around building personal brand, and something that you should start yesterday. That personal brand building can be as subtle as you setting yourself a goal that you are going to reach out to comment on someone that you admire's post on LinkedIn once a week. That is building your brand. That is you having something interesting to say back to someone else, that is baby steps and flexing this muscle, that it is a muscle. Like, oh, mate, like literally I've started that many businesses with zero marketing budget. So I have to pimp myself out as the face of this thing in cringe for years. But the thing is, I have never had someone saying, oh, look at you, Joe, doing this out there, or things. They're like, that's so cool what you're doing, or like that's super cool. And because I saw that, I was thinking, I saw your thing on this, and so I wanted to introduce you to so and so. If you can think of Joe Inc. as being something independent to you, that's how I've always sort of made it sit in my brain, is that I'm like, oh, I'm doing this stuff because this is the marketing piece for this project that I'm working on. And just even separating your personal brand, even though it is you, but you're doing it with a strategic purpose for the purpose, your purpose or mission statement or something like that. I feel that has been a really interesting way for it to sit more comfortably, because you throw the modesty out. Of course, you are going to sell a product that you're passionate about or whatever, and it just happens to be that you're the product that you're selling that you're passionate about.
That's a really great way to frame it. And I agree. I remember years ago, I think when LinkedIn first came out, yes, put my profile up, okay, and over my career, I've actually had 3 roles that I've gotten from LinkedIn because of people have found me or recommended me through that way, right? But I used to have in my diary, open LinkedIn Tuesday, open LinkedIn Thursday, and then it became like something. Don't just go and scroll in there. Then it became put a smart comment. Just so it was just a real tiny baby steps, which then I think when you do that, it actually builds confidence.
I love that. I think that is like some very solid advice. Okay, I have one question that I was quite keen to sort of get you to delve into. So, do you want to give us a quick little rundown on a specific board that you and Jules happen to be on together? And I just wanted to pick it as like an example. If you can sort of think back, and because you sort of touched on it prior to saying that you actually have picked up 3 roles through your presence on LinkedIn. So I wanted you to give us a quick brief overview of the board that you two are on, but I would love for you to try and follow the trail, the breadcrumbs back to how you think you landed there. Or not even think, if it was something quite strategic that landed you on that thing.
Easy. So the board that we're both on is Australia's Economic Accelerator. If you haven't heard of it, it's under the federal Department of Education, so reports into through the chair to Minister Clare. And the remit of the board is essentially a really large number. It's $1.6 billion. It's got the remit to help us translate faster the research out of our universities all around the country to impact and commercialization. Commercialization being the key word, because we do great research in this country, but it doesn't get out to business, and getting industry to also, do that. The second part of the thing is around the Trailblazer program. So this is another kind of mechanism to get industry research connectivity with government support together to build capability, but also to commercialize faster. And the third part of that is industry PhDs. So how do we get more PhDs that are out there, but getting them actually working on the real business challenges that is out there. So that was the board. I actually saw that advertised. And the reason it stopped me from my scroll, and I think I may have seen it, I can't remember if it was in the papers or it was LinkedIn, or it was Chalice, I think, who were doing it, right? They're very big in the board space. That's a recruiter in Sydney. And I guess the reason I would have looked at it is because it's innovation and it's commercialization. I had no idea about it until then. And the way that it was written was quite high level. So it didn't really specifically, I bring obviously the innovation commercialization. It was across all sectors. So first and foremost, when I look at that, I go, oh man, I don't bring all the other sectors. I've only got my agri-food stuff. What can I add to this? So you start to question yourself. And then, it was very much around that whole policy piece and recommendation, but it was an advisory board. And when I did some sleuthing and some research, I found there was an interim board. So then I go, are they really going to get new people in or not? Right. So these were all the questions as you do your due diligence. But I spoke to the recruiter. It's always good to kind of introduce yourself and do all of those great things. These are things that other people have shared with me, so I'm paying it forward. And I actually applied. And like any one of these boards, you apply and you don't hear for months. And then one day I got a call that says, oh, I think you may be shortlisted. And yes, you are shortlisted. And I asked the question, and you should always ask this question. I always like to ask how many people applied, how many people are getting shortlisted and things. So it was a pretty big 3-digit number of people who applied. And even at, I don't know, why did I ask myself? Then I go, oh my God, what's the chances? What's the chances I'll go to an interview, right? And then had an interview. So it was initially a 25-minute interview that turned into a 50-minute conversation, just because of the interest they had in me, the experience and what we were looking at and everything. And then again, I didn't hear back for months and months. And one day I was, I was working away. I was in the city and I got an email. It went straight to my junk folder because it was from the Department of Education. Can you imagine if I didn't look at it? And there was a letter saying you're appointed. And I was like, oh my God, I was sending it to my husband, Alvin, going, read this, is this real? So that was my experience, guys. But I am really enjoying the time on that board and the impact that we see we're making. You know, there's some investment rounds that we do in terms of grant funding, and really it is the culture piece that we're trying to change in terms of how we're supporting the commercialization of research, of great research that we do, that has to have impact out there as well. So yeah, and Julia's good fun. She's our deputy chair as well.
Can I just say how actually refreshing that is to hear that you saw it advertised and went through an actual process like that wasn't just done on a golf course or a shoulder tap, that you actually went through the legit. And I didn't even plant that question. I picked that one because I assumed you would have like somehow wrangled your way in there. So I am very, very, I guess, buoyed by hearing how that actually happened. Like, I genuinely am.
It's a new process, right? And I haven't been lucky, and I do know some people who have gotten from the golf course, or just gotten a phone call in, or I haven't been that lucky. So maybe in my strategy I need to figure something else out.
You got to take up golf, mate.
Damn, that's never gonna.
And I'm going to finish on that note that while everyone goes and signs up for their local golf club, that may or may not benefit your board career, just saying, putting it out there. I don't know if the Rock golf course is going to throw some national board positions in my direction, but I am really, really grateful for your time. Like, this whole call, I've just seen everyone's heads nodding along to the things that you're saying. So many gold nuggets in there, and I just really appreciate your insights and your, sharing the love and paying it forward, as you said, as far as advice that you've gained over the years. So thank you so much. That was a really, really interesting conversation.
Oh, thank you. I had fun, and thank you for all the great questions. Yeah, I really enjoyed it, and not just talking about self, but learning from yourselves as well. And I think it doesn't matter, where you sit. Let's continue the conversation and connect. I think, having lived in regional areas and now living in Melbourne, it's it's not a region versus city. It's actually how do we all become allies to help each other out as well. And that's the kind of stuff. So you all now know my purpose. So if you've got some exciting stuff around that, I'd be very keen to always talk about it.
Love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.